It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the program. And with me in the KFG studios, no Kevin Korhorn today, but my fellow CFP and one of my closest friends in life, Josh Gregory.
Good to be with you, Mike. Well, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about? What are you afraid of? You know, the opposite of financial worry is financial peace. And we're going to be helping you kind of dig into those financial concerns that you have and hopefully have a game plan for dealing with them. That and more coming up in this hour of the Wise Money Show.
That's right. I mean, it's very possible the thing standing between you and financial peace is addressing that financial worry right now and cleaning it up and fixing it. And we're going to share some of the most common and then how you solve them to help you get closer to financial peace. That's what we're doing today. Listen, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions for the show, want to engage with us in any way, you can call or text 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com. Submit questions right there and catch up on other content. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. All right, Josh, so where does Halloween rank in your list of sort of favorite holidays? At the top or at the bottom?
No, it's more bottom for me.
Like, it's not middle. Like, no one has Halloween
you
in
either
the
love
middle.
it or hate it?
Right. I cannot stand it.
Really?
I do not like being scared, number one. And I think I actually personally judge anyone that actually does like being scared. I wonder about your mental state of mind. And so anyway, but the other thing about it was, so growing up as a hockey player, there's always tryouts around Halloween. Like the week of Halloween was always like the big tryout. And so it was just never a fun time of year
Nerve-wracking,
anyway.
stressful time for you?
Yeah. So we're going to play off of that a little bit today, and not in a silly way. Like, oh, what are, the financial boogeyman? No. Real financial worries, real financial concerns. What are they? Josh and I have both made our list. And then how do you, like, what's the antidote? And again, just to get a little silly, like I'm thinking, Frankenstein. I never watched the old Frankenstein movies, some of those classics. But like when he goes all, gets all crazy, is there some sort of antidote, or is there something that calms him down and keeps him? I have no idea.
I don't think
right?
so. I think you're thinking of the Hulk.
I might be.
He's
yes,
gotta
I am.
calm himself down.
Of course. But like, so not only pointing out what are those financial fears, but then what's the antidote? Like, how do you calm them down? How do you address them? How do you relieve those fears? So, Josh, I mean, we both have just made our list. So what do you got?
Oh, I love the topic, by the way.
Thanks.
I was actually kind of excited coming into the studio today because this is something we have never hit before.
Right.
You would think after all these years we're into recycling topics, but this one's new. So golf clap to you. I don't know if it was you or Lindsay that came up with that one, but I'm excited to talk about this. And it mostly got me thinking about what are the fears that I observe in clients.
Yeah.
Because it comes out in conversations. People sort of bare their souls when they're, reviewing their financial life with you. And the types of questions or concerns that they're asking reveals what it is that's on their mind. And often it is stuff that's literally keeping them up at night.
Yep.
So, to me, I think most of our fears, they can fall into some commonalities, I guess. And it's often things that you feel like you can't control, or maybe you can't see coming. Sometimes, it could be things that you don't really understand. Those might be a little bit more irrational fears at times. But if it's an event that you have a hard time bouncing back from, that can really be stressful for people and even debilitating at times. So my hope is that as we get into these, my hope is that financial planning will be the overarching antidote, and dealing with these things head on and not just kind of stuffing those fears, because they really are legitimate, and it could be steering you in the wrong direction at times.
And influencing some of the decisions you make. If you're living in a state of sort of financial fear, you could be missing out on taking advantage of or making progress in certain in other areas. So let's get into it. What would you say, Josh, is maybe the number one financial fear or concern that you would observe in people or that you've seen?
This one, I'm guilty of recency bias on this one because I just had a conversation with a client last night, called me up and said, hey, I got a letter in the mail that says I'm going to lose my job because I am not vaccinated and I don't plan to get vaccinated.
Whoa, you're going there right now, Josh.
I am.
Jeez, that one did not make the top of my list.
Did you want to ease into that one?
Settle down. Don't let this be a lightning rod. Okay.
No. In all seriousness, though, for him, he's never. We've never had conversations about him fearing his job. He's a top performer in his field, has had a great career, loves the company that he's in. And really, we've always talked about, well, someday he'll retire from this company. Like this is a kind of a dream job for him. And now he's wrestling with a question that never was on his radar, but it was forced there just recently. And that is, what if you lose your job?
Are you the advisor for Kyrie Irving? Okay.
Wow.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, that's losing a job. That was actually the top of my list as well.
Okay.
I think for a financial fear, that's on most people's list. I think financial planning though does help solve that. But you're talking about this. I mean, some people might be listening, saying, "Well, geez, to solve that one, get the shot.
Just go get a shot and you'll be fine." Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in his particular case, he's actually fresh on the heels of just recovering from COVID and got an infusion. Like it was a big deal. But he was advised, no, you shouldn't go get the shot in the next 90 days or whatever. Yeah. But his employer is saying otherwise. But that's just a circumstance, right?
Yep.
You could lose your job from getting conked on the head and you're disabled and can't work anymore. Or you could lose your job because your industry kind of changes or your job gets outsourced to another country or something. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that people face this, but it resonates differently with people depending on what stage of life they're in. Because someone in their 20s, for example, losing their job, it's like, well, I wasn't planning on being here for very long anyway.
Sure.
Someone in their 60s or 70s may also be thinking, well, I'm just going to figure out, can I just go retire? But those people who are really, truly dependent upon this income and they have a bunch of other lives in their home who may also be dependent. They've got college tuition payments or mortgage payments and everything. Those are folks that need to have already had a game plan in place before this event arrives. And the very first thing to have in place, we talk about emergency funds all the time as a financial planning tool to deal with uncertainty. And to me, the uncertainty that it helps you to resolve or try to prevent is a loss of income. Interruption to income is kind of the granddaddy of all emergencies.
Yep, that's right. And that's typically why the rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of your lifestyle or some people just make it easy and say 3 to 6 months of your income. I would say 3 to 6 months of your lifestyle. And that, if you lose your job, you've got 3 to 6 months to go and replace it and find another one. And so the antidote to the fear of losing your job, sometimes that's you influence it, right? It's your job performance, but other times it's totally outside of your control.
Yep.
And so how do you relieve yourself of that fear and that worry? I'd say the 3 bank account system and that third bank account is that emergency fund. That's the most important. But the other 2 are just as important, and that is that you've got a routine, that you've got a habit of saving up for known upcoming expenses. Because if you've got something that is already circled on the calendar, it's going to cost money, and you've already said yes to it, you've committed to it. Do you have the finances there to cover it? Whether that's a vacation or Christmas or a house repair or something like that, having the money set aside for it, and then do you have the right margin built into your budget each and every month as well? So that topped my list as well. We're going to get into the other big financial concerns, helping you address them and solve them. That and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. You're at the Wise Money Show channel. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, every Saturday morning, even on October 30th. All throughout the week, though, if you're not interested in a full 1 hour us rambling on about a certain topic or a couple, all throughout the week, we have Next Wise Step videos. Take one specific topic and address it, apply it directly to your financial life, whether that be the largest increase in cost of living adjustment for Social Security in the past, 40 years, or whether it be they're getting rid of the Roth conversion or what have you. We're talking about that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so that you're made aware every time we drop new content. And if you like the content, smash that thumbs up button. Thank you. All right, it's going to take us a while to get through a list. If we're so, maybe.
So can we come back to that topic for just like 2 seconds, though? Because the emergency fund is a thing.
Yep.
To deal with, but
yep.
I think there's more to that one, and then we don't have to go into as much detail on.
I'm assuming some of these we'll pull out and make full shows on, so we're not going to be able to talk around all of them. Sure. Let's try to have a little more variety where we're still saying, hey, here's the fear, maybe here's a story or example, and then here's how you'd fix it, and then
sure.
Yeah. All right. Financially, what keeps you up at night? You know, when you can't sleep, when you had too much coffee or whatever, you're just laying there and your mind's wandering. When it wanders to finances, what are the concerns you have? We're addressing them today. We're pulling those skeletons out of the closet or whatever, and we're helping you address it so you have financial peace. That's what we're talking about today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Joshua Gregory. No Kevin Korhorn today. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, just search the Wise Money Show. All right, the first big financial fear that we started tackling is losing your job. And Josh, a couple more comments to share about how you solve that one as a worry?
Yeah, we talked about the emergency fund, which is more preventative medicine than anything. You've got to have it in place, obviously, before the interruption to your income occurs. But, some of the other things that you can be doing proactively are just constantly focused on building new skills. Transferable skills are a big part of your problem solving if you do lose your job. And it's the thing that I would want to encourage you with. If you're facing a job loss coming soon, or you just did lose your job, that's a time to kind of stop and take inventory on, all right, what are the skills that I have that are valuable and they're marketable, they are transferable into another employer. Maybe you starting your own business, maybe it's even transferable into a completely new industry, but those skills go with you. And building them while you're in a current role, while your job is not on the line, I think is really important. And a lot of people, they're content to just kind of coast along in life instead of constantly sharpening the saw, so to speak.
It's almost hard to even think about this right now, although many, I'm sure, listening have recently faced job loss or something like that. But we have so many more job openings than there are even people looking. It's hard to even think about downsizing or whatever. But I would piggyback on what Josh said and tell you for other preventative medicine, do more. Find a way to not only build more skills, but apply more even at your current job, and that will help hopefully insulate you if cuts or something come in the future. Here was the other one that got me thinking about, when I think about financial fears, this one stood out to me. I remember going on a trip, just Cindy and I, when we had 2 of the 3 kids, but we didn't have the full estate plan structure in place that I knew we needed. Okay. I think it was a wedding over in Estes Park, Colorado. And Cindy and I were we had looked at it and like, okay, if we get a plane ticket, we'll have to drive to Chicago, which takes time, then fly to Colorado Springs or Denver, and then rent a car and drive to Estes Park. And we were like, you know what? Let's just drive this thing. Stupid, dumb idea. Really,
it's
really
a
bad
long
idea.
way.
It's a long
Colorado.
way. So we just drove that thing in Carrington and Kipe, stayed home with Mila, and I remember having some financial fear about that. What if something happened? And we had a will in place, but it just wasn't the right structure. And so I think that's a fear a lot of people have, either passing away with young kids, or maybe you could even just say, what if something happens and I don't have a will in place, or I don't have the proper instructions in place?
It's so funny that you have the same second one as I did. I worded it just a little bit differently, and that was fear of losing a spouse or a family member and not being ready for it, which has to do with estate planning, has to do with your life insurance that you have in place, that sort of thing. And it's one that I don't know about you, but most clients, they might not articulate that as one of their concerns right out of the gate. But when we bring it up, it's like they get real vulnerable real fast because it is the one that's in the back of their mind that they don't want to give attention to. And it is the reason why estate plans go uncreated, undrafted, unimplemented. And it's always the big trip, right? That gets people thinking like, well, what if this plane goes down or whatever.
Why'd you point at me? Gosh, Josh knows
I've been on plenty of planes with you, and it looks like the most stressful event of your life every time.
So how do you solve this one? And one component is working with a certified financial planner and doing a life insurance needs analysis. And part of that process is just talking about those financial risks. In particular, if you were to pass away, you or your spouse pass away. I mean, it's awful to think about, but what would life look like? How much, how much income would you have? What bills would you have? And sort of go through that process to then determine if there is a life insurance need or if there's a gap between what you have and what you really need, and then how you solve that. I typically, Josh, I'm assuming you feel the same way, typically like to have that conversation about that life insurance needs analysis in the exact same meeting we're talking about the estate plan. Yeah. Because people don't like to talk about these
twice.
Right, at different times. Like, who wants to go see their financial advisor if every time you go see them, they're talking about you dying?
It is a depressing meeting, though, when you're covering both of those topics.
But I think there's certain emotions, of course, fears that come into play anytime someone's talking about that. And so you're going to want someone that has the heart of a teacher, that can teach through the life insurance process and why you would need a certain amount versus, or a certain type instead of something else, and then teach through the estate plan as well. I think education can go a long way to getting people comfortable with, okay, I see what's needed here, and I can make the necessary decisions to get the right stuff in place.
Yeah, not only choosing what documents to have in place, how to set up beneficiaries and everything, but also how do you communicate this to your family? When is it okay to start letting your kids know about what's going on in your financial life, and what would happen if the unthinkable occurred, right? And both mom and dad were gone in some crazy accident or whatever.
And just a couple weeks from now, after the show on a Saturday, I have a family meeting with some clients who've unfortunately seen some tragedy in their life. And as we got the estate plan restructured for mom and dad, they said, let's bring all the kids in. We're going to zoom in a couple from New York and from out of town. And then the ones that are local enough are going to come in, and we're going to just talk through it. So
that's great.
So work with your certified financial planner. Face these two fears. Face this reality. You don't have to dwell on it. I think when Cindy and I originally set up our estate plan, I talked to her about who she'd want to play what role when we were on a road trip up to Grand Rapids, because she couldn't squirm and get out of the vehicle and avoid the conversation. It was like, okay, if this happened, who would play what role? And so
that's great.
Josh, another financial fear. What's another one?
I think one we have to talk about is on the mind of many folks, especially as they get closer to retirement and they've accumulated the most investment assets that they've ever had in their life. And the fear that the market will just erase it all right on the eve of retirement or even into retirement. And that one, it may be more on the irrational end of the spectrum, because that doesn't really happen all that often if you've really diversified well and you've structured your investments appropriately and you're not taking more risk than is necessary. But this one feels to me like it's one of those examples of an event that feels out of control for a lot of people. Who can predict what the stock market's going to do next and what's going to cause their investments to decline? And so it feels like this ever-present possibility, and it could undo a lifetime's worth of work in theory. But to me, the way that you avoid this is by having someone in the cockpit with you, someone helping to fly the plane as you go into retirement, and making sure that you aren't taking excessive amounts of risk. And as the world and your investments do really well, what happens over time is often risk starts to drift higher, and you may need to pare that back at times. A certified financial planner's job is to help guide you through that.
And another kind of antidote to that, as you've accumulated more money than you ever have and you're going to start using it, so on the eve of retirement, is restructuring those investments into a personal pension plan, into a format so that your long-term money is taking high risk, but your short-term money is not, and you've got that clarity and confidence with that as well. So stock market crash was on my list. What else is on my list? I don't know if we're going to get through all of them. What are the financial fears? How do you address them? We've got more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Yeah, dude.
I think some of these will be more rapid fire, just almost listing, though, don't you think?
I do.
There's not a lot to say about some of these.
Yeah.
Or at least the ones on my list.
I just added a couple, though, right before we turned on.
Did you?
Yeah. So, and they could also be. I'm just thinking, we're probably going to be picking. Each one of these could be its own show.
Yeah. Could do a whole series on.
Yeah, but then people wouldn't want to keep listening. Just like clients wouldn't want to come in and see a financial advisor if every time they come in they're talking about them dying.
Well, yeah, but these are the things. If we're getting the list right, these are the things on people's minds. And
well, just those first two, and even the third with the stock market crash, everyone is worried about that.
Sure,
everyone. So, yeah, I mean, unless you own your own business, there is at least some fear of losing your job. And trust me, if you're listening to this bonus content, if you own your own business, you don't have the fear of losing your job. You have the fear of your business falling apart, right? Which I would argue is a higher fear.
Right, because it's other people's jobs also being
other
lost,
people's
right?
jobs, and there's personal guarantees that you like. So the business owner, it's not. I don't know a lot of business owners that just say, well, I'll just update my resume onto the next one, next one
right.
up. No, you're financially and just in life, it's not as easy. So anyway.
It's true.
All right, third segment. So let's get in as many as we can. And then in the fourth segment, I mean, we'll transition. So, all right, we're talking about financial risks. What are your financial fears? Sort of a play on being that it's Halloween right now. What are you afraid of financially? But these aren't like silly little, are you afraid of the dark sort of things. These are real. In fact, the first three we've hit, I'm going to say everyone shares these fears. Okay, the point is, do you have a financial plan in place that allows you to have financial peace, even though these fears or these uncertainties exist? We're helping you with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, not with us today. Every episode is on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. You missed anything today or catch up on previous episodes, go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there. All right, Josh, we left off on stock market crash.
Yeah, to me, stock market crash is one of several items that kind of could all be lumped together into the category of fear of running out of money.
Okay.
And it's like one of the causes in many people's minds that, well, the stock market's going to cause me to lose a bunch of my assets and I'm going to run out of money because of that.
But that's not, so I had running out of money in retirement as a separate one than stock market crash. They're absolutely related. But you could be entering into retirement or close to retirement wondering if you're going to run out of money and whether the stock market crashes or not.
That's right, because maybe you don't have enough accumulated,
sure,
right? Or maybe you have these major expenses that are going to cause you to kind of dwindle your nest egg faster than what you really can afford to do. So there's lots of reasons that someone could run out of money. The stock market feels like one that many people bring up, or it feels like it's out of their control, so they want some reassurance in that area. Mm-hmm. But yeah, spending too much in retirement may be a cause for you to run out of money. I hear people every once in a while, they genuinely fear ID theft or just the theft of money, getting ripped off in life. I mean, white collar crimes like this, they're a big deal.
I want to park on just on the running out of money in retirement for just a moment, because I also think that is apparently the number one fear of baby boomers. Josh, remember this is a long time ago when we were doing presentations and whatnot, we saw that was the number one fear, and the second greatest fear was death.
Yeah.
People would rather so anyway, which is sort of ironic in a way if you think about that. And so what's the antidote to that? Because it could be, well, you might be taking too much risk in the stock market, and if there's a crash, you might not be able to recover. I think it's more, you said spending too much. Well, what if you're just spending your lifestyle? You're normal. Like you would say, well, I'm living within my means, what you thought was in your means, and yet didn't structure Social Security correctly, didn't prepare correctly, didn't have the right structure in your investment. So to me, that antidote, you've got to be preparing to address that fear early.
Sure.
30s, 40s, and then in your 50s and 60s, updating and refining that 5-factor retirement plan so that you know when you step off that cliff and transition from working into retirement, you know you've stress tested your plan, you've got high confidence, 90% confidence, and mathematically that all the assumptions that you're not going to run out of money. And so your certified financial planner should help you address that one.
Yeah, that is, and that's the emphasis there. They should be helping you. This should be a conversation, a collaboration between you and your certified financial planner. It's your life that they're trying to stress test, your vision for the future. And as you get into those conversations, there's all kinds of trade-offs that may be available to you, and it's them trying to help you understand what are the things that are within your control in retirement. Could you save more? Could you retire a little bit later? Could you spend a little bit less? Could you take more or less risk with your investments, that sort of thing? And the more control that you have, I've just observed this over time, the more control that someone perceives that they have, the less fearful they are. Right? So now, whatever age you are, now is the time to be thinking about what you want your retirement to look like. Those later years when you walk away from a paycheck, are you going to be in a position where you have lots of options, you have lots of choice and control? If you are, it becomes less and less fearful for you to make that transition.
What about this one connected to it? You ever have people afraid of transitioning off of their health insurance at retirement or whatever? Like that, I think that's a genuine fear. What am I going to do for health insurance? And even if you retire at age 65 or later and you can transition right onto Medicare, there's also some fear because that thing is as complicated as possible. And so I think the antidote when you're transitioning from group health insurance over to Medicare, the antidote is lots of education early. Start that understanding process. We've done lots of shows on it, but that even of itself is no substitute for talking through it with your certified financial planner and a health insurance expert. But then I think there's even more fear when you're transitioning off of group health insurance to some other insurance that's not Medicare.
Yeah. In fact, I've seen some clients who it's a fearful enough event to go off of a group plan and onto, the Affordable Care Act, something in the marketplace, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. And there's some who have postponed retirement. They could afford to retire at, say, 60, but they keep on working to age 65 because they don't want that 5-year gap where it's going to be an out-of-pocket expense to buy their own health insurance. Even though we can prove to them confidently that they can afford to do it, they just don't want the expense. They don't want the uncertainty. They don't want that change. And it's unfortunate, but you're exactly right. If you can be more understanding or more aware of, better educated on what your options are, maybe that doesn't have to be a hurdle for you to prevent or delay your retirement.
Yeah. What about this one? The getting that love letter from the IRS. I can close my eyes. I can picture the envelope. I can see it. The IRS notice. There is, no one likes that surprise, number one. And number two, though, I know we've also seen it where some folks, there's a phobia with taxes as well. And maybe you've received a notice, or maybe you're afraid of getting a notice or afraid of getting in trouble. And sometimes that can be I mean, it shuts people down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, getting in trouble in some people's minds is I'm going to go to jail if I make a mistake on my tax return or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take this to some extremes at times, but often, and we tell people this all the time, after we file a tax return for someone, there's always a risk that they're going to get some sort of a notice in the mail. And sometimes that notice will say, hey, you owe us more money than what you sent us.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like just gripped by fear, and it's their knee-jerk reaction is to get the checkbook out and, you know, send off this money that the IRS says that they owe. And in reality, often it could be a discrepancy between some records. It's a simple letter that the CPA writes and makes it go away.
Yep.
Right? Because the IRS, believe it or not, they can be wrong at times, right?
Often. And so to me, the antidote there is working with, to me, it's not just a CPA, because a CPA is not going to understand your entire financial situation. It's a certified financial planner who's doing tax planning with you and your tax professional, so that any notice you get in the mail, it's, okay, well, let's figure out, what are they saying? Oh, yeah, this was a mistake by the IRS, or looks like we're missing a tax form. Did you receive that tax form, or something like that? Those fears are easily squelched with the right team.
Yep.
We've got just a few moments left here. Josh, rapid fire. I mean, what else?
I think major health expenses in retirement, that long-term care event where you need some sort of skilled nursing, that can erode someone's financial life, and a lot of people fear it.
Yep.
I think fear that your kids will never come off the payroll.
Oh, the
that one,
that's,
you know, failure to launch, I guess you could say, might be a fear of some parents at times. And then just major out-of-pocket expenses that are unpredicted. Mm-hmm. That's often a topic of discussion for financial planning clients.
I had house fire and getting sued.
Yep.
You know, those are some big ones. Guys, there's just a lot. Whatever is on your list, work with your certified financial planner. Find some financial peace. Get a plan in place. All right, we've got more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. That one went long.
About 10 seconds.
So, all right.
Okay, so you have insurance questions in here?
Yeah, I've got 3 of them. I put them at the bottom. What are you financially afraid of? Hopefully the discussion thus far has pointed out some financial concerns and maybe motivated you, hopefully encouraged you to take your next wise step to move from financial fear to financial peace. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Joshua Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast, so if you've missed anything today or want to catch up on previous episodes, wherever you listen to podcasts, just go there, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it, and rate the program there. We appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Auto Owners Insurance for sponsoring this segment of the Wise Money Show. They do so on a regular basis where we're talking about insurance topics, insurance questions from fans of the show. Thank you, Auto Owners. We appreciate that. And it goes hand in hand with the headliner topic today, which is financial fears, because getting the right insurance protection in place and having the right risk management strategy is vital to living with risks, but having financial peace.
That's right. Having insurance doesn't make the risk go away. It just deals with the potential ramifications if a bad event actually occurs, right? Yeah. You lose a spouse, there's a bad car accident, your house burns down, you're getting sued. These are things that you can actually transfer some of the risk to an insurance company if you get the right protection in place, but it doesn't stop those events from occurring in your life.
That's right. All right, so let's hit some questions from fans of the show. First one, my goodness, we did a Next Wise Step video on this a few weeks ago, so check it out. But I mean, this topic I think is going to be something that we hit several times over the next couple of years until this current trend changes. So here's the question, or here's the comment. My replacement value for my house on my insurance is very different than what my house is actually worth. Is that a concern? So Josh, explain that real quick.
Well, so what's your house worth? That's market value, right? That's what would a willing buyer pay for this house if you were to sell it?
You know, like a willing buyer, like Zillow or BlackRock. Your normal run-of-the-mill folks that are buying up houses in neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Oh, and by the way, BlackRock's using government money to buy houses. That's unbelievable.
It really is. This is a new world we live in, isn't it?
Yep.
Well, so what you would sell your house for is not necessarily what it would cost to rebuild that house if there was a complete loss. That's what replacement cost is. If you literally had to rebuild this thing from scratch, what would it cost? And the thing to keep in mind is when you're buying insurance for your home to be able to deal with that type of tragic event, you're not only paying for the cost of all the construction and everything, but usually baked into these policies is a little bit of wiggle room for prices to drift higher if we're in an environment like this where lumber prices have been all over the place over the past year. Labor shortages are causing a lot of these prices to increase and everything. So it's not just a moving target on what the replacement cost really could come to, but there's also, if your house burned down or if it was knocked over in a tornado or something like that, there's a bunch of costs into just getting the debris off of the lot. And that's got to be covered in this replacement cost as well. So getting back to just a clean slate, you don't have to insure the land itself because the land's not going anywhere. But if the house burned down, you got to get a clean slate, and then we're rebuilding from scratch, essentially. That's what replacement cost does for you on your homeowner's policy.
I'm glad you mentioned the land because typically inside of a subdivision, a third acre or something like that. I don't know what normal lot sizes are. 30 grand, something like that. Cindy and I a while ago were like, well, should we build? There's some lots left or whatever. They were like 30 or 40 grand, and then the lots became more scarce and they were 60, and now they're 100,
yeah.
Right? Or even farmland. Farmland, I heard recently in Elkhart County, $6 grand an acre or something like that. No, like 40,000 an acre, which is just insane.
Yeah.
And so that's baked into the market value and the value of the house. And what I'm sharing is there's been significant upward pressure on those prices. So that makes potentially your house market value higher, but that doesn't impact the insurance, the replacement cost. And yet at the same time, the same force that's at work driving house prices up are also driving, construction costs up and labor up. And so I guess I would want to make sure, Josh, you're saying, well, those are different things, but this is still an important time to look at that replacement cost.
It really, really is. And that's because, if you've been in your house for 10 years, let's say, and you got the right amount of insurance the day that you moved in, it's probably been on some sort of autopilot, just small escalation over time, essentially trying to keep up with normal inflation. Well, if you come into an environment like we're in right now over the past 2 years and prices have skyrocketed, that automatic increase may be way off from what your actual replacement cost would be. Again, separate from market value. Yes, they both move higher together typically, but the number that matters for insurance is what would it cost to rebuild this thing? And your insurance agent should have at their disposal a pretty sophisticated software tool that allows them to interview you and essentially understand what is it about your house that makes it unique and everything. What's its square footage and what kind of flooring and roofing and all that stuff. And it goes into this calculator called a replacement cost estimator. And it essentially estimates if you had to rebuild this thing today, here's what it would take. And that allows you to kind of snap the amount of insurance back to the right amount. If you've done any kind of improvements on your house since you bought it or since you last did a replacement cost estimator, you could be wildly off on your number because that finished basement changes things, those new windows change things. There's all kinds of things you could be doing, and you need to revisit this periodically.
I would periodically, and I would actually tell you, for the majority of you listening, that's right now. Right now, I mean, to me, there's been enough changes with prices and distortions in the market and supply chain issues and whatever. Now is a great time. If you have not contacted your independent insurance agent recently and said, hey, can we do a replacement cost estimator? Now might be that time. And if you've never done that ever, call an agent now. I would tell you that now is the time. And certainly we're happy to help our team of independent agents at KFG. We're happy to help. But reach out to an independent agent and get that work done.
And let's just be honest with ourselves too. When you do this, if your replacement cost goes up and the amount of insurance you need goes up, it's going to cost a little bit more, right?
Yep.
But don't be fearful and just avoid doing this because I don't want to pay any more for my insurance. Well, if you have inadequate insurance, you may be paying for it many times over in the wrong direction. You may be having a pretty awful financial hit if the wrong event occurs and you are underinsured.
Okay, so I'm gonna share a story, and then to segue to the next question, I'll share a couple more, and that is just found out recently that I had a friend of mine that had a house fire. I mean, dogs apparently bumped or touched or something on the stove, and trust me, he wasn't planning on that. They were not planning on that at all. And so if you say, well, I don't want to go through this replacement cost estimator because it might mean I need to insure my house for more, and it might mean I had to pay a couple extra bucks. Well, listen, if you find out that you're facing a house claim or fire or something like that, that's not the time you want to worry about, wait, do I have the right protection or not?
Exactly.
All right, so there's one story. Transition to the next question. How do you properly insure a vehicle in today's market? Is gap insurance more important these days? I was at a softball tournament for my daughter. We're talking to some of the parents, and one of the parents had a really nice Cadillac Escalade or something, like one of the long ones, okay? And I don't know what, is that a Cadillac Escalade XL? I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm not a car person, okay? And she was talking about how it's 2 years old, and a dealership called her and offered her $115,000 to buy it.
What?
And now she might be making it up. I don't know. I didn't say show me the proof. But, I mean, that's insane. If that's even close to accurate.
Yeah.
And so, like, a couple other parents and I were like, so you sold it, right? And she's like, well, no, because then I'd have to turn around and buy something, and we love this vehicle. But when vehicles, especially used vehicles, are going for this high, how do you properly insure them? So this gap, to the question, this gap insurance is the difference between, sort of what it's worth and what you owe.
Right.
So I guess...
But it really only applies if you were the original buyer.
Yeah,
right?
that's
so
true.
It's got to be on new cars. But the whole reason that this originally was created was when you buy a new car and drive it off the lot, it drops in value immediately, right? But unfortunately, that loan doesn't drop in balance immediately.
Yeah.
And so you could very quickly become upside down on a car loan if you're buying brand new. And what if on your way home, you wreck the thing?
Yeah.
It's worth less than what you bought it for. You owe more than it's worth. You have a gap between those two numbers, and the insurance company, can provide coverage for that on a new vehicle. But I guess to your point, if you bought that brand new vehicle and today it's worth more than you bought it for, what a strange world. I don't even know what that means for gap coverage, but...
Well, talk to your independent agent about it. I think also at the same time, though, similar to replacement cost estimator for your house, I think exploring, do I have the right coverage on for property damage on my vehicle or for a vehicle that I might damage accidentally in an accident? Yeah.
Or your vehicle being damaged by someone else's accident, right? If that person doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough insurance, it's your policy's uninsured or underinsured coverage is what's going to make you whole if they're driving around without any protection in place. You need to look at that number and make sure that the limits that your company is willing to pay is enough to actually fix the vehicle or replace the vehicle. Sometimes there can be a gap there in the amount of uninsured or underinsured coverage.
I'm thinking about this, and we eat our own cooking here, but I have not looked at my auto insurance to review my property damage limits. And I just got me thinking, okay, that's probably something I need to do. So Janet, if you're listening, I'll be in touch. But is this a fad? The vehicle, there certainly has to be a fad that used vehicles are going up in value. That we know that will change. But are vehicle values all of a sudden going to drop like crazy? Or so this is okay, if you wait long enough, you won't need to update this insurance? Or What are your
It
thoughts?
reminds me of the cash for clunkers deal back coming out of 2008 and 9 and everything.
Yeah.
There were so many used vehicles that just disappeared off the market, and there was a shortage of used vehicles, so prices increased. It's a short-term anomaly that I think will correct itself once we can actually get chips in new vehicles and so on. So hopefully this is a temporary problem.
All right. Well, I hope that helps. I appreciate the auto owners for sponsoring the content. So hopefully that helps. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, myself, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.